Hello everyone! This week we've been looking at poetry, specifically mini-beast poetry. The last few days we've been looking at a type of poem called a cinquain, as we know that there can be different types of poems. We know now that cinquains have rules, such as there's only allowed to have 5 lines, and on each line you're only allowed a certain number of words. We also know that cinquains don't need to rhyme. But today we're going to look at a different type of poem. This isn't a cinquain, this is a rhyming poem. And it's called Ladybird. And it's by a poet called Liz Brownlee. See if you can find the rhyming words in this poem. Red round ladybird in the flower pots, walking up the leafy stems in your polka dots. Okay, so the rhyming words in this poem are pots and dots. She has used some features that we have looked at previously this week in poems, such as adjectives and verbs. So can you have a look to see what words are the adjectives in this poem? She's used the words red and round to describe the ladybird. She's also said that the ladybird has polka dots. She's told us, the reader, where we might find ladybirds as well. She said flower pots and leafy stems. And the verb she used to describe how the mini beast moves is walking. So today we're going to have a go at writing our own rhyming poem, a bit like Liz Brownlee's. So we're going to do what we normally do in school, which is we learn the poem first and then we start changing some of the key words to make it into our own. So we're just going to magpie some ideas from Liz Brownlee's poem today. Okay, so have a think of what type of mini beast you want your poem to be about. Ladybirds, bees, wasps, snails, slugs, woodlice. Have a think now. Okay, let me show you then how we're going to write a poem, because it's a lot easier than we think at this point. Just a few things we need to remember. We need to include some adjectives. We need to include verbs and tell the reader where we could find this mini beast. So, for example, the ladybird was flower pots and leafy stems. Okay, and probably the most important rule of this poem is that on the end of line 2 and on the end of line 4, we have got some rhyming words, pots and dots. So we're going to do exactly the same with our poem. Line 2 and 4 need to rhyme with each other. Okay, the other two don't rhyme, do they? Ladybird and stems. They don't sound similar, so they are not rhyming words. Okay, I'm going to start changing this poem to make it my own now. So my first thing I'm going to do is think of what mini beast I want. I'm going to choose a worm. That's what my rhyming poem is going to be about. So instead of saying red round ladybird, I need 2 adjectives to describe a worm. So I'm going to change this word to worm now. Now, I need to change these because these don't make sense now. Red round worm. So thinking of some words for the worm, I'm going to say pink. That's one word I could use to describe what a worm is like. Another word might be slimy. Pink slimy worm. Okay, that's the first line done. Right, we're on to line 2 now. Now in line 2, Liz Brownlee has told us where this mini beast is usually. So ladybirds were in the flower pots. So I need to think where my mini beast usually is. So mine's a worm. So where do we usually find worms? We find them in the soil, in the mud, or underground. So I'm going to say crawling underground. But remember, the last word on this line needs to rhyme with another word later on. So don't choose a really hard word that you can't think of rhyming words for. You've got to help yourself for later on. Right, so I'm going to change this line to crawling underground, because you don't usually find worms in flower pots, do you? Not usually. Unhighlight that now. Now remember, My last word now is underground. So I'll have to think of a word later on that rhymes with underground. Pink slimy worm, crawling underground, walking up the leafy stems in your polka dots. So this is the bit we've not changed. Now, worms don't walk, do they? They've got no legs. So I know I can't use that verb. I'm going to have to think of a different verb. And they don't usually go up leafy stems, do they? They're usually closer to the floor. So instead of saying walking up the leafy stems, what verb could I use instead of walking? I'm going to say worms, they wiggle and wriggle, don't they? So I'm going to say wriggling. Wriggling, they can't go up leafy stems. Wriggling, where might worms wriggle? I'm having a think, I'm using my prior knowledge. You might find worms in your flower beds, mightn't you? In the soil near all your flowers. So I'm going to say wriggling through the flower beds. Pink slimy worm, crawling underground, wriggling through the flower beds in your polka dots. Now that, first of all, that doesn't rhyme, and it doesn't make sense because worms don't have polka dots. So I'm just going to change Liz Brownlee's poem again. I've used exactly the same structure as Liz. I've just changed it to make it my own. I've replaced the adjectives, I've replaced the verbs, and I've made it about a different mini beast. Pink slimy worm, crawling underground, wriggling through the flower beds, something, something, and a word that rhymes with ground. I might put, because worms do have a lot of predators, birds love eating worms, so I'm going to say, hoping he's not found. And let's have a look. Do my words rhyme? Look, ground and found, they both share this owl sound in, and they sound very similar, so those are rhyming words. So I've followed the rhyming rule. I've followed the adjectives, I've just changed them, and again I've used verbs in the same place as Liz Brownlee, but I've just changed it so it's more accurate to my mini beast. So let's read it from the beginning. Pink slimy worm, crawling underground, wriggling through the flower beds, hoping he's not found. Fantastic, there we go. So I've done exactly the same as Liz Brownlee, but I've changed it to make it my own, just using those simple rules of replacing the mini beast, the adjectives, the verbs, and not forgetting the rhyming words on the end of line 2 and the end of line 4. You might want to do a different one. You could change it to be about bumblebees. So you could say, instead of pink slimy worm, you could say yellow stripy bumblebee in the flower bed, buzzing around the garden, pollen is what they spread. Have a think, see if you can do, write a poem today, a rhyming poem about a mini beast. If you'd like to do more than one mini beast in your poem, then you can do that as well. Okay, good luck, and let me know how you get on.